All right, folks, welcome back to another Fontana podcast. On this episode, we've got another special guest. I'm just going to rhyme off some of his accolades, and there is a long list, but be patient. So he's a multiple national champion as a junior and a senior over 800, 1500, the 3K, and also cross country. He's a junior Great Britain representative over the cross country. He's a Scottish Youth Commonwealth Games representative in 2008. He's an NCAA mile champion, 6-time All-American, and also All-Conference, 2 times Melrose Games mile champion. He's represented GB in the European, World, and Olympic Games. He's 2013, 2017, and 2018 outdoor 1500 metre British champion, 2019 indoor 3000 metre champion, represented Scotland at the Commonwealth Games in 2014 in Glasgow, and also at the Gold Coast in 2018. 2014 European Outdoor Championship bronze medalist. 2015 European Indoor bronze medalist at the European Championships. 2019, this is the best one yet, the Ingebrigtsen sandwich, silver medalist at the 2019 European Championships in Glasgow. Without further ado, I'm bringing to you Chris O'Hare. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good. Thank you very much for having me.
Good. So before we even start about, how's training, how's, lockdown and COVID-19, when I rhyme back to you those accolades, and again, they're not all of your accolades, how does that make you feel? Like, sort of having them recited back to you?
Yeah, it's kind of, I think we live now in a day and age where you want to try and condense everything. Nothing can be longer than like an Instagram profile blurb. So it's quite funny to hear all the things back instead of just what I deem to be like the best 1 or 2 things. So it's I'm glad you've got them written down, because there's things in there that I'd kind of forgotten about. So it is nice to hear them back, though.
Yeah, and that's, again, something that you said there is something you forgot about. I think we're always shooting for the future. What do we want next? What time do we want to run in the next competition? What place do we want to come in the next competition when we want to, the UK trials or the Olympic Games? We're always shooting for more. And again, that's what makes you one of the best athletes in the world, because you're always looking for that future prospect and that future opportunity. But I think sometimes, probably a good topic just now is Mental Health Week, is, looking at how far you've come as a junior through into a senior, and then looking back and going, people would give, their left leg to just have half of those accolades. But sometimes I think when we get caught up in our disappointments, or we get caught up in our life, we kind of take, probably looking back at that, you'd be taking that for granted at some points. But then if you sit down and actually gain perspective, you go, wow, this is some career.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the nature of being an athlete, is that, and I think you could, if you were to poll all athletes over all disciplines, all sports, the things that sit in the front of their minds are the things that they failed to do, their goals that they didn't quite meet, and it definitely I've been on the kind of the difficult end of that, where you think these things are, it's the be all and end all. And actually, we just briefly spoke about Neil Gourley there. He'd been on your podcast already, and I roomed with him in 2019 at the indoor champs in Glasgow. I say I roomed with him. He stayed at his mum and dad's house most of the time so he could get his mammy's cooking, but we shared it together, and he came back after the day of what would have been his final, but he didn't get to run because he was sick, and he was obviously quite disappointed that he didn't get to run, but he'd obviously spoken with his parents and family and everything like that, and they'd kind of managed to bring him out of that hole that we can easily get sucked into, and we had a brief conversation about how it doesn't really matter that much. You know, it seems like it's the be all and end all when we're here in this meaty hotel, surrounded by everybody that we're racing against, that, you know, all the team staff, all the team coaches, all the other teams. But you know, you can walk down the street in Glasgow to get a sandwich and nobody knows who you are.
Yep.
And that's kind of the benefit of being a sport that's not so kind of, you know, it's not one of your big major sports. And so, and then I had won a medal. It was second in the 3K. And I remember speaking to him that outdoor season and saying, like, it was funny because we had that conversation about it not really being a big deal. And then I got on the plane, you know, and when I was still in Scotland, I was thinking, I'm just won a silver medal, like feeling pretty good about myself. And then, like, you get on the plane to go back to America, and they're like, I'm like sitting in the middle seat in basic economy with like nobody knowing who you are, nobody giving a crap who you are. And then you get off the plane, and you know, I've been volunteer assistant at Tulsa for a couple of years now, and you know, the British guys on the team are having to almost explain to the American guys on the team like how big of a deal the European Championships is. It's like the whole of Europe.
Yeah.
And they're like, all right, cool, whatever. And it's kind of in a way you're like, all right, well, like doesn't really matter that much, but it does help as long as you can bring that kind of knowledge that it doesn't really matter that much into the losses, into the times where you know, are really struggling. That's when that experience helps, because you're like, okay, I can get back on the plane and I'm feeling sorry for myself. But again, nobody knows who you are. Again, you're sitting in a crappy seat in the middle of basic economy. Doesn't really matter. So, you know, obviously as athletes, we want to do well, and we want to keep progressing. And like you said, you know, mental health week, it's important that we don't just put all of our eggs into this basket, where if it doesn't go well and you drop the basket and you have a bad race, that all of your eggs are broken, and it's just your whole life just seems like it's falling apart, when it's really not.
Yeah, no, I like that. And it's, I guess, also being a husband and a father has helped you gain even more clarity and even more perspective, and how you don't wrap your identity up in just that, like you were saying, that one basket. You're an athlete. No, you're Chris O'Hare, that's a husband, a father, and enjoys now being an athlete, and embraces the whole situation. So, you know, I'm guessing you're one of the very few guys on the British team that is a husband and a father, I'm guessing.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. And you know, some people that are new to the team, and when they meet me, they're like, "Wait, what do you mean you have a wife and 2 kids? Like, what are you talking about?" Like, but I mean, having a family is you know, it's huge. Certainly does make, when you have those bad races and even the good races, and you kind of you know, I talk about the bad races, but you also don't want to get caught up in thinking thinking the dog's bollocks when they do have a good race. I mean, you need to be kind of brought back down to earth a wee bit. And you know, when you come home and you have to change nappies and you're getting thrown up on, and you're having to get up in the middle of the night, and you're like trying to explain to your 6-month-old child that you need to sleep because you've got an 8-mile tempo in the morning. They're like, "Aye, very good, Dad." Like, you know, that kind of thing. And it helps it. I think perspective is the best word to describe it, because it keeps everything in line. It keeps everything to where you're like, well, you know, keeps it in perspective, and you don't get too carried away, and either in the positive side of it or the negative emotions as well.
Yeah. Oh, good. And how's family life just now? With we're in lockdown, COVID-19. How's the family? How's the boys? How's the wife? And also, how's your training going at this moment in time?
It's brutal, mate. Nah, I mean it's fine. I mean, ultimately, it's not that much different from when I'm at home. If I'm not away in a camp or away training or racing, then it's just like it normally is. Really, I mean, my wife works from home. Her mum comes over and helps with the boys, and so the only thing that's really different is that Ronan isn't going to his school, his daycare school type effort that he goes to. So he's just tearing around the house, destroying everything he can see, to keep us on our toes. And Riley's learning to walk now, so we're having to walk around making sure he doesn't smash his head off all the sharp corners that you don't realise a house has until you've got a toddler. But ultimately, it's not been that different. It's not like I go to work, go to the office at 9 o'clock in the morning, don't come home till the kids are almost in bed. When I am here, I'm present and I'm doing my fair share, and which is great. And I'm fortunate enough that I've got a job that when I'm here, I can really be here and take advantage of that time. So it's been fun to be kind of not have to go anywhere, or certainly at first it was fun to not have to go anywhere, and kind of it removed a lot of the pressures of your just day-to-day life, stuff you had to do. But now it's getting a bit old.
So in terms of your training, like this is your full-time job. Like we're talking about work. You're missing half of your work. There's one half is your training. You still can do that, but the other half is your competition, and that's been taken away from you. How are you coping with the situation of training with no competition just now?
Yeah, it was difficult at first, and it's the first when we first kind of got put in lockdown, so to speak. I was dealing with a bit of a foot niggle, and so I said to Terence, my coach, I said, "Look, I'm just going to take a week, get on the bike. I'm not even going to I'm not going to take my phone. I'm not going to take my watch. I'm just going to go and ride for however long I want. Just be active for a week, but not focus on training, not focus on mileage, not focus on the sessions. Give my foot a chance to heal, and then kind of build back into it." Which I think for me was the right decision, because it would have been really quite difficult for me to get amped up and go down to the track by myself and smash a session, not having any direct competition that I was getting ready for. My training is very aerobic, so it's lots of the tempos and the fartleks and the long track sessions and stuff. They're easy to do mentally. They're hard to do mentally, but they're easy to get down to the track and do it. But because the times don't matter as much, there's a bigger play in the paces. So, but then when you get down to doing speed stuff, then if you miss it by half a second, you're angry that you missed your times. And so that was my concern, was that I was going to get myself in a bit of a rut just trying to smash sessions and hit times that were somewhat arbitrary because I didn't need to be doing them yet. So right now we're just still kind of in that aerobic base phase, or a bit past the base phase, but aerobic phase where we're just doing longer stuff and getting the mileage in and trying my best to take care of my body.
Yeah, good. And this would obviously be a different scenario if competition was on the horizon. You'd be looking at, you'd have been done a couple of 1500s or maybe a 5k at the start of the year, opened up with that sort of stuff, and then starting to build in towards your speed work in your 1500s just now, with the British champs are looming in the next sort of 46 weeks it would be. Again, how's in terms of the training being a lot longer and a little bit less intense, does this mean that you've kind of went back to like a winter training phase?
Yeah, that's kind of, when I was kind of getting a bit worried about it, a bit panicked about it in the time when, in that kind of 2 week period where stuff was getting cancelled, but not everything was cancelled.
Mm-hmm.
Really, the non-important stuff, so to speak, the kind of early season races, your Peyton Jordans, your Oxy and stuff like that, where people try and just go and run fast and they do off events, stuff like that, but do a 5K or whatever. But those were going away, but the championships and the Olympics were still on.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the stressful time for me, because having not got a standard last year, it was, I'm thinking, look, now I'm even more on a time crunch. If they open up races 3 weeks before British Champs, and I've got to try and run a standard and be top 2 at the British Champs, all in like a 3-4 week period, that was obviously going to be pretty stressful. So, but Terence was just saying, look, here's the thing. You mean all you really need to do is be in the shape that you were in February, and you weren't really in shape until like December. So all you need is a couple of months. If you keep the mileage, if you keep doing the aerobic stuff, all you need is a couple of months to get it right to where you're in shape to win races and to run fast. So that kind of helped me deal with it, and to where it's like, okay, if we get, they've announced that we're going to have some Diamond Leagues, but I'd be surprised if they happen in August, certainly. It seems to me that, there's a Gateshead Diamond League, but it seems to me that there's a 2-week quarantine if you come into the UK.
Mm-hmm.
So folk aren't going to be able to come 2 weeks before a Gateshead Diamond League, be in quarantine for 2 weeks, assuming that that's still in play in August, and then either go back to their own country where they're probably going to have to quarantine for another 2 weeks. You've got like 8 or 9, 10 Diamond Leagues in the space of 10 weeks. It's just physically not possible when most countries are going to require you to do some sort of quarantining. So if that is still the case by the time we start to race, and it doesn't seem like there's going to be enough hours in the day for it to actually work. But yeah, it's good to for me, it's good to kind of know that ultimately all I need is a couple of weeks to get it right. As long as I keep doing what I'm doing right now. So it's that removed a lot of the stress behind it for me. To know that when it does start to kick off and we do get word of concrete plans, then it'll be a bit easier to just get after it and race.
Yeah, no, it's good. Like it's good to hear that you're, even though sometimes the chimp is trying to come out the box and derail you a little bit, you're very quick to gain perspective, and your coach seems that he's really good at helping you with that as well. So that's really cool. But I want to go take us back to where it all began, Chris. You as a little kid running around Edinburgh and Meadowbank and Holyrood Park. How did you get into running to start with?
Really, my older brother was on. I just wanted to be Ryan. Yeah, I just wanted to do everything that he was doing. And obviously, some people just hate their big brothers. Some people, and some people love them and just want to do everything that they're doing and be just like them. And that was me. And he was just on the West Linton cross country team that met for training like a week before a race called the Three Bridges through Peebles, and I was like, seems like fun, just kind of running fast and trying to kind of keep up with your pals, and Ryan was like one of the top 2 guys on the team, but I knew that I could kind of run as far but like faster than Ryan, so I was like, well, why can't I do it? And my mum was like, well, you're only in primary 5 or primary 4, you need to be this age. And I was like, well, that seems like a load of horse, but whatever, I'll give it another year. So we had to kind of wait, and then the next year they kind of just let me on the team, even though you were supposed to be in primary 6 and 7, and I think I was in primary 5, and they were like, well, he's better than the rest of them, so just let him on the team, whatever. And it kind of started from there. My mum and dad could see that it was something that I was good at. There was some raw talent there, and you know, I'm sure my mum's biggest concern was just keeping me out of trouble. And running did an okay job at keeping me out of trouble. It did a good enough job to keep me out of too much trouble. But yeah, it was. I think at first just something to do. My parents could see the kind of the people that I would be around, and they didn't think I would be socialising with bad folk like Fontana, and they didn't know about you yet. But
and Sean Riley and Sean Devaney and
yeah. I know all the Seans always kept me in trouble. But you know, and I did love it. I loved I'm fortunate enough to grow up in an area like West Linton, which is out in the hills, and you know, there was no shortages of places for me to run. And you know, from going up and out into the hills to through forests and stuff like that. So it was always quite fun, and I never really did anything other running wise other than track sessions until I was probably 15. And you know, anybody who knows Dave Campbell and who knows the group that we had back then knows that we just, you know, the older guys would just knock chunks out of each other every single Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday and Sunday. And that's kind of how I grew up in the sport. And that's, you know, they taught me how to just be hard, just how to be tough. And if you didn't bring it on a Tuesday night or Thursday night, it was like, all right, well, have fun, just getting battered. Yeah. And so that was a good way for me to grow up in the sport. And I genuinely think that Dave is one of the best coaches that Britain has ever seen in middle distance running, and potentially one of the best coaches that Britain will ever see, because he's just so wise, and he was so sharp with it all, and he had his wee book with all the handicaps in it and everything like that. And I remember going to the track, and it was like our group was the kind of premier group, and people would look at Dave and he'd be like telling people where to start and yelling at folk, and it was just all, I'm fortunate enough that it was all very professional. Like from day one, it was all very professional. And I can't thank obviously my parents for taking me there, but Dave for taking me on, and Darren Gosling, Chris Gosling, Dougie Selman, Mark Mitchell, my brother Ryan, and for just kind of teaching me how to get battered. And honestly, I don't think I really won. I didn't win a national type race until I was probably 16 or 17. People like Sean Riley and Matthew Gillespie used to just beat me up and down the cross country course every single weekend, and so that definitely helped me grow as well, to know that, you know, I didn't grow up being the kid that always won everything, and so I knew that you can lose and you'll come back the next week and you might lose again. You might lose every single bloody week for the next 5 years, but if you're having fun with it and you keep coming back, then you can sneak your way into university in America and end up with a degree and sneak your way into a contract and whatnot.
But like some of the stuff you were saying about, you know, like the training group, definitely like the Gossins, Selman, Mitchell, these guys weren't just the best in Scotland. Like these guys were the best in Britain that you were up against every single week. And one of the things I absolutely love about Dave Campbell is he's such a nice man. Like, see when he chats away with you, like such a nice guy, but his training is vicious.
Yeah.
It's just like, how did that nice guy able to do that to me? Like, what's going on here? you know, and his, like you said, his book was his pencil and the handicaps. And if, you know, just for talking sake, you had a great week or a great couple of weeks, he'd then move you back towards, you know, and
Yeah.
it was almost it was always positive reinforcement for doing well in training. You know, it was he was like, he was super wise. I trained with Dave for around, I think it was about 6 to 8 months, when I was at Stirling University, and just the, you know, how kind he was, but then at the same time, like you said, how professional everything was. It was, and actually the reason I went there was because of you.
Right.
How you had done, because you just moved to Tulsa, and I had no coach at the time, and I thought, you know, it was Derek Easton, and
Yeah.
he told me I had to sign up for Central if I wanted to train with a group. So I kind of gave him a custard pie and said, "No, I'm not going to do that." And I get in touch with Dave, and he welcomed me with open arms. And you know, I didn't stick with Stirling University, so that's why I went back to Glasgow. But he just wanted to help me because he saw that I was an athlete in need. You know,
Yeah.
so it shows that even though he had such elite athletes, he wouldn't mind helping athletes that were, you know, that maybe were just on the verge of elite, that were sub elite or even club. He would
Yeah.
The handicap system just helped everybody.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it. And I mean, yeah, you could definitely see a hell of an eye for talent, and um, that was all he needed. It was like, well, there was two things he really needed: talent, but most importantly, hard work ethic. And if you had that, and you could just go to the well, then he was like, it doesn't really matter how good you are, because I can make you better if you just work hard. And that is, you know, it's a difficult combination because there's lots of coaches out there that only want to work with really talented people, and they think they know a lot and they're really trying to overthink it. Whereas Dave does know a lot but doesn't overthink it, and kind of did a spectacular job of making it just easy for everyone to understand. And that is the sign of that's the sign of a true genius, being able to explain it to a layman. So yeah, I mean, it's quite amazing how many athletes he's coached and how good they've become over the years. I mean, it's wild.
And then even Josh Kerr
Yeah,
as
yeah,
well. You know, it's unbelievable the amount of athletes he has put in Great Britain vests, either as a junior or a senior.
yeah.
Unbelievable.
It's
So
wild.
I like, and it was great that you touched on Ryan, because not I was wondering where Ryan, if he played a part in, you know, was it a sibling rivalry, or was it somebody that you admired, that you were maybe like a brother that you want, like the kind of like Ingebrigtsens, where, you know, they want to
Yeah,
be like the other brother and hopefully push on better than. Um, I also had a rivalry with your brother as well.
right.
Your bra went tit for tat in 1500s as well. So like me and him had a rivalry. So that's pretty cool. And at what point did you when you're talking about talent and hard work? At what point in your career was it? During the time as a junior before going to America, but where did you start to go? Actually, I'm actually going to pursue this like I believe that I've got a future in athletics. When did that happen?
Honestly, you know, I don't think it ever really dawned on me until I got to Tulsa and um, and started to see, you know, proper success, i.e., you know, winning nationals here. And then once you kind of in that club, you get that kind of, you know, you go, okay, well, all these other guys that are signing pro contracts, you know, obviously once every year goes by, you've people are signing pro contracts that you've been racing,
Mm-hmm.
and you're like, hang on a minute, I just beat that guy at nationals, and he's just signed a contract with Nike, or he's just signed a contract with Adidas, and you go, hang on a minute, that could be me. And so it wasn't, I never really, I think growing up and, my first coach was actually a guy called Charlie Russell in Peebles. He was in Erleaton, but we trained in Peebles, and it was a small group of people, and really only raced the professional circuit, the Highland Games.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was kind of where I grew up. And Dave had such a, he was heavy in that background as well, because when he was running himself, it was you were either amateur and you had a rich family, or you were professional when you were running Highland Games and stuff like that, and road races and stuff to win money, and not only that, you had a job. So I didn't actually even really comprehend that you could be a runner and not have a job,
right,
until I was at university here in America. Because I'd never really seen it in the UK. It's not like we had household names really in track and field. I mean, you did, but there was a lull. There was really a lull between like the co-vet and cram era and the now era. So when I was growing up, there wasn't really like a British 1500 meter 5k guy that was able to make a living from it, right? So what I could see was people had fun doing it. They went to Scottish Championships, they went to British Championships, they went to, if you were lucky enough to get into these kind of the Golden League or whatever it was called at the time, and you also did the Highland Games, and you could win a couple of £100 at the Highland Games if your handicap was good enough. So that was where I grew up in it. And it wasn't, like I say, it wasn't until I got to America and I'm seeing people that I'm like, wait a minute, I'm racing these guys, and then they're finishing at uni and they're going on to sign pro contracts. And then I was like, wait, people can live off a contract that they're making while they're running. I was like, fair enough, give that a whack if I can swing it. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't ever really in my line of vision that was a potential of something that you could do.
Wow, because before you got to America, you got your first junior GB vest and cross. You also ran a good few 1500 meter records as well, indoors and outdoors, as a junior. So I was thinking that maybe it started and then you used Tulsa as your platform to then propel on to the professional scene.
No, I think I mean that would be a safe assumption, but for me, I had never planned on going to university. It wasn't really something that I wanted to do, because I never enjoyed school. School was always difficult. I wasn't your typical academic youth. So, I mean, and you know that from when we were young and doing daft stuff. But so it wasn't ever part of the plan necessarily to go to university. And it wasn't until my mum had said to me, well, here's the thing, it's going to be really difficult. Not to say my mum and dad have never been you're not doing that. You're not doing that because it's not going to align with whatever. If it'll make you happy, then we'll kind of give it a try. And more often than not, it was like, okay, well, you can go and try that, and you'll see that it's rubbish, and you'll come back to us, and we'll figure something else out. Which ultimately is in hindsight, a spectacular way of parenting. But my mum said to me one day, she was, because she was asking me kind of what I wanted to do, and I was probably in third year, maybe at the time, getting absolutely atrocious grades, not going to class and whatnot, and just doing whatever I wanted instead of going to school. But she said to me, it's going to be really difficult to run after you've been working in a garage all day.
Right.
And because I'd said, I've always loved cars, and I'd said, I probably really like being a mechanic. And she was like, well, that's fine if that's what you want to do. But if you want to run, if you want to keep running, it's going to be really difficult to do it after being in a cold, dark garage all day, eating a Greg's steak bake for your lunch. And so and that was kind of like, okay, well, that was the kind of seed of me being like, okay, well, maybe if I want to keep running, I'm going to have to like go to uni. And then we were actually on holiday in America, in Florida, and we met a guy with an Arkansas track and field t-shirt, and my dad was just kind of asking him questions, and we'd never even heard of Arkansas, to the point where we kept calling it Arkansas because we'd never even heard of Arkansas. And we this guy kind of explains it and talks to my dad about John McDonald, this Irish coach who's just, he's one of the best college coaches ever. And we're kind of like, all right, cool, And we're in one of these bloody 3-hour lines to get on a 30-second ride. And we kind of go back to the villa that night, and we were researching some stuff, and we're both kind of like, that can't be right. Surely that somebody doesn't pay for you. Tulsa, 4.5 years. The 4.5 years at Tulsa probably came out to about $250,000 for the 4.5 years that you're there. And we couldn't quite comprehend that was going to be covered. Seemed like a bit of a scam to me. Because, but we kind of, I was probably at that point in maybe still in third year, maybe going into fourth year. Must have been that summer going into fourth year. And then that autumn, that's when like Darren started. That's maybe when, I think that might be when Darren went. Mm-hmm. Because he went out to do his masters at Butler, and then Chris followed him to go at Butler as well. And then it all seemed to just start to kick off. Like other people that were a few years older than we started going out, and so we started to really kind of do some research, and around about that same time, people started to email me and call me and, offer me scholarships and stuff like that. So then it kind of all just kind of seemed to fall into place. And at first for me, it was really just an opportunity for me to continue running. And getting this education was going to be just like a side piece. But it also focused my mind, because I was a long way off having good enough grades to get into uni, but anywhere, never mind going to America. So, fortunately my parents got me a tutor for English and stuff like that, to make sure that, and I had to commit a lot more time to where the last couple of years of high school I was just running and studying and racing, and that was it. But that was something that I was willing to kind of to do, to make sure that I could get out to America and do this, be able to keep running. And then my first year there, I was just plagued by injury. I went out with an injury and we just couldn't seem to get it under control. And that's when, I remember being in, I did exercise science and kinesiology, and a lot of the people on the team also did the same degree. And so I was in class with a lot of the folk on my team. And the first test we got back, I had got like a C. And I was like, perfect. Like C's get degrees, that's fine with me, whatever. And then, and all the people, like all the guys in the team had got like A's and high B's, and I was like, that's a bit weird, isn't it? And they were like, oh, don't worry, we'll help you get your grades up. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm passing, like that's fine by me. But then over the next couple of months there, that kind of team atmosphere that we were here to run and get good degrees and kind of advance our lives, because most of the people at Tulsa aren't going professional, and they know it from day one. So they're there to get their degree, and the running is kind of there to help boost their CV and something to do and get them some scholarship money, blah, blah, blah. So it was kind of after that first year that my mindset changed to being kind of more academic and athletic as well, which has certainly made me a more functioning adult. But so I had to come a long way just to get into uni. But it was definitely worth the sacrifices and when I was in high school.
Yeah, and how was the experience, like the relationship with your teammates, your relationship with your coach? Was it Steve Gully that was your
Steve
coach?
Gully, yeah.
Yeah. How was the university experience at Tulsa? Did you sort of, like you were saying there, did you start to relish in it? Because I know that personally, I had a massive struggle, because coming from the British system, where it's very individualised, where it's not a group format, it's, you go to the coach and you say, oh, I think I need this, or maybe we could do this, and the coach will listen and then put that plan in place for you.
Yeah.
How did you find moving from the British system into Tulsa, and then going with the relationship with your teammates and your coach?
Yeah, I mean, Coach Gully is excellent at dealing with Brits. I mean, he had Brits before me, and he's had a succession of Brits after me, and he's very good at dealing with that. Because and I remember thinking, maybe a couple of weeks in, thinking, they promised me that this was going to be individualized training, but I'm doing the exact same stuff as everyone else. What's individual about that? And I asked him that, and he said, well, Chris, it's August. Like, everybody needs to be doing mileage, tempos, fartleks, because if you don't, you'll get absolutely battered in cross country in 10 weeks' time when we go to regionals. And if you can't do it, then why are you here? Like Tulsa's not a program that has Tulsa. Most programs in the nation, you either need to be a middle distance or distance guy that can do cross country, or like an 800 guy that can do a 4x4. Because if you can't get them more than just one event's worth of points at a conference championship or a national title or a national championship, then you're not really that much good. Yeah. And so for me, I was, the middle distance guy, brought in as a 8:15, potentially even a 5K, which never really transpired because we didn't really need that. It was always just an 8:15 guy, but also there to lead the cross country team, because, I could get that done as well. So that worked. And it wasn't until indoors came around that I thought, okay, well, here's the individualized part. And obviously there was guys doing 100 miles a week, 110 miles a week, and I was on like 70. Mm-hmm. And over the years I built up. But so it was individualized in that respect, but they were still expecting me to do the sessions, because, well, I needed to do the sessions to be able to race. And I think that's what scares a lot of British people going to America in the first place, is that it's like, okay, well, like, I've never done an 8-mile tempo before. I'm just used to doing 10 by 300 with 3 minutes rest on a Tuesday night, right? And they're like, well, right, but have fun going to race 2 10Ks back to back, like 10 days apart, in some of the most brutal competition you've seen in a cross country race, off 10 300s.
Yeah.
Like, so, yeah, and part of it is in the UK is it's like you don't really have the ability. Most training groups meet in an evening because people have school and work and whatnot, and it's all kind of a voluntary style setup. So you don't have time to like do a 3-mile warm up and 10-mile tempo and a 2-mile cool down when you meet at 6 o'clock at night. Like, where are you going to do that around Edinburgh at 6 o'clock at night? Like, so, and it's always bloody blowing a gale. So it's like, you can't do that. And you can't do 8 by a K on the track, because it's like, it's just, you'll be dodging 9-year-olds all night. Like, so a lot of it is just kind of the environment that you're training in has to be susceptible, like has to match up with what you're actually trying to do. But yeah, it took me a little bit to get used to the US setup, which is kind of always going to be higher mileage, longer sessions. But ultimately, at that stage of any athlete's life, 18, 19, 20, that's when that transition should be happening anyway. Yeah. Otherwise, you're just going to get left behind.
Yeah. And was there a specific? So usually, certain universities have their specific session that was their key workout that they used to do in the cross season? Did Tulsa have their sort of staple? You know, it was a big one. You get ready for this one.
We didn't really have a session where it was like, all right, this is a 3-week build up for this one session we're going to do. But we always did a tempo. Every single week we did a tempo, whether it was 8 miles, 10 miles, 6 miles, whatever it was, always did a tempo. And I actually really liked that. I really liked the kind of repetitive nature of it. You know, there are obviously you at some point you worry about diminished returns, but not really with a tempo. There's so many different ways in which you can run a tempo that it's kind of a necessary evil to keep in there, especially, like I say, for getting ready for 2 10Ks back to back. But yeah, I mean, I think the 8 mile tempo was always kind of one thing that we just always did, and I was kind of dreaded it. You know, every single 8 mile tempo went the exact same for me. It was like, be in it for 4 miles and then have an identity crisis halfway through, being like, what am I doing? Why am I running like 5:10s, 5:05s for 8 miles? What am I doing? Slow down to like 6-minute pace, 6:30 for like 2 miles, and then just absolutely blast the last mile and a half. And to get back on, so that coach didn't think I'd been slacking. And it was pretty much the same every single time.
And then I'm guessing one of your highlights has to be your indoor win in the mile, your individual title in the NCAAs, because you had this. I don't know if it was, but from the outside looking in, you and the athlete Miles Batty kind of had a little rivalry there, you know, from the year before. You know, finishing second by literally the width of a vest.
Yeah.
And then we move into the next year, and I'm just thinking, when I'm watching a race, is history repeating itself again this year? But how, you know, tell us about your mile.
I think that was, well, to go back to the year I got beat, that was the most, probably, well, I know for a fact that was the most instrumental time in my career. That was the most important year in my career. That indoor season was when it changed for me. Because the year before I'd made it to regionals and then got knocked out in the first round of regionals in the 1500. And so then it was just about being like, okay, well, just try and break 4, right? That was the goal. Just try and break 4. And really every year in the past, if you broke 4, you were for sure in the meet. You were for sure top 16. You definitely hit the nationals. That year, I ran my first time sub 4 was I ran 3:56 in Arkansas, and went to like 2nd or 3rd in the rankings, and I was like, oh bugger! Like, now I'm actually like expected. People know who I am now. Like, this is somewhat of a big deal. But and then I got to nationals, and people still didn't have a clue who I was. So I was like, all right, perfect. I'm back where I like to be. And I think that's what kind of created that somewhat of a rivalry, in the sense that Miles was expected to just go and win that nationals. It was not going to be that big of a deal. Just go to College Station, go Texas A&M, win the mile, win the DMR, get back to Utah and be done with it, get ready for outdoors. And he just pipped me on the line, and then that was kind of like, he was like, well, who the bloody hell was this guy? And then the next year, I think that was the first time that somebody had ran sub 4 and not made it to NCAAs. And unfortunately, it was Chris Gosson who was the last one out. He had broken 4. He'd ran 3:59 something, but it was 17th. And so didn't make it in. And for me as well, that because Chris was always somebody that I looked up to, and so it was weird for me to leapfrog him and him be the first one out and me almost win. And then the next year was wild. I mean, you know, there was like everybody in the final had ran like 3:57 or faster or something like that, and you're just like, I remember coach saying to me in the truck on the way to the airport, being like, this is kind of unprecedented. I don't really know what's happening because so many guys have ran fast. Yeah. And coach's biggest phrase for me, which I always joke with him about, because he always said to me, I'd ask him for like tactics, advice, what to do in the race, and he'd go, you know what to do. And I remember actually standing on the start line at Texas A&M the year that I was second, thinking, I don't know what to do. I really don't. Like, I've never been in this situation before. I really have no idea what I'm supposed to do. So I just tried to win it from the front, basically. And then the next year he was like, all right, you know what to do? And I was like, all right, hang on a minute. Like, let's come up with a better plan than that. And he was like, well, just do what you did last year. It almost worked. Just make sure it works this time. And I was like, all right, fair enough. And so I led pretty much the whole thing. And it paid off. But you know, that NCAA title was crazy, but actually I think being second and running then like breaking four for the first time and then being second at nationals was the biggest jump that I've made in my career, for sure.
And then also that year you set the NCAA record, the former NCAA record, but you at the Melrose Games as well, coming fourth place in such a massive event. How was that?
Yeah. That was crazy because we didn't go into the year trying to break the record. It wasn't the game plan. But then we get invited to Melrose and you're like, right, you know, you've got to be ready for it. So we're ready. We're just getting ready for the race, just so you don't get embarrassed, kind of thing, you know. And then I break the record, and it's like I just ran 3:52. Like, let's just go and let's make sure we like do what we came into the season to do, which was win nationals, be one of the few people that have ever won it twice. The NCAA mile record curse got me, as it's done to many a good athlete before and after me. But I just had an absolute stinker at nationals in the final, and I think it was 6th or 7th maybe, and just demolished. I mean, that was the first time that I was like the first time at Tulsa where I didn't have my mum and dad basically to help me out of the emotional kind of downturn that comes along with like a bad race that's expected to be good. And so that was the first time that it was really tough. But breaking the record was crazy. And Melrose Games is just it's a wild race. It's just crazy. It's kind of hard to explain to someone who, I don't know, have you been to the Armory?
No, I've not, no.
Yeah, it's a weird place to explain to someone who's never been, because it's you actually warm up. It's on like 4 different levels. The bottom level is some like track and field museum type thing. Then you go up a level, and that's like that you go up a level, and that's the warm up area. And then you go up another level, and that's where the track is. And then the another level is where the stands are.
Wow.
So you're like it's like a Coliseum type effort where the fans are like above you, kind of shouting down at you, like you're a bunch of cattle. So it's a wild experience. And the first time I did it, I was like, right, I'm ready to go. And we didn't race for another like 12 or 13 minutes. By the time they'd done the national anthem, they'd done all the introductions, and I was like, mate, come on, when are we going to start this race? Because I've never been in that environment where it took so bloody long for us getting on the track to actually starting. And that kind of messed with me a wee bit, but as soon as our gun goes off, you forget about it. But that is a wild race. Yeah.
And then as you're moving out of Tulsa into your senior professional athletics, you you start with in 24 the Commonwealth Games in Glasgow. So another, like you're talking about the Melrose Games and the sort of the prestige there. How did the Commonwealth Games in Glasgow feel at Hampden Stadium? How was that?
Yeah, that was quite crazy because it was everything I wanted it to be, because I'd missed out on London. Missed out on the London Olympics by basically missed the standard, I think, by half a second or something like that, and I was third at the trials. So I just missed out, and so Glasgow was kind of everything I was wanting it to be, to kind of fill that hole that I'd missed from London. And honestly, Glasgow was one of the best experiences. I remember the day of the final. Well, first of all, I remember the day of the heat, thinking like, why are so many people here to watch a heat? And it was absolutely rammed. The place was bouncing, and obviously there was other finals on that day. But I remember the introduction. I've just never heard anything like it, and I'd been in loud stadiums, I'd been in loud environments, but never to where everybody or the majority of the people in the stadium were shouting for you. That was new for me, and that was quite intimidating at first. And I remember the day of the final was like really nice in the morning. We get to the track and it just starts chucking it down, like absolutely chucking it down, and like good proper Scottish rain. And I was like, this is perfect. Like, I mean, in an environment like that, you tell yourself whatever you need to hear to like make yourself okay with it. And I was like, this is happening for me. Like, the rain is happening for me. Like, these Kenyans will never deal with the rain. Like, meanwhile they're thinking like, whatever, mate, I'm a 330 guy. Like, shut up. And it was all kind of it was just, it's probably one of the races I remember the most. Warming up in the pissing rain, you were wet, just as wet inside your jacket as you were out of it, and you go in underneath the stands from the first call into the underneath the stands, and my old chemistry teacher, who was actually my registration teacher, who I have a lot to thank for, because she kept me out of a lot of trouble. Signed a lot of forms that shouldn't have been signed to keep me out of trouble and stuff like that. But she was one of the volunteers. She had volunteered, and so I saw her as I went in, and that was quite emotional, kind of positively emotional. And then you get out onto the track, and the rain had stopped, and it was like sunny. And I was like, what happened here? And I remember saying to Nick Willis, I was like, it was raining like 20 minutes ago, wasn't it? And he was like, yeah, I don't know what happened, but it's beautiful now. And it was like perfect weather for the fight, for the track was wet, but whatever. And then the last thing I remember was being in like a pretty good spot with 300 to go, and the noise just erupted. And it kind of carried me down the back straight, probably faster than I wanted to go. And I was kind of just all out at that point. And then I think I might have got into into fourth or fifth, kind of right with about 150 to go. And then the wheels just started to fall off. And then in the home straight, a couple of guys passed me. I can't remember. I can't even remember how I finished, but I just remember the noise just dropped.
Oh.
It was like everybody was like, "Come on," and they were like, "Oh, he's buggered. He's not going to get there." And it was like, it obviously wasn't quiet because it was still noisy, but the volcanic noise had just stopped. And I was just like, 15 years to go, I was like, oh, for goodness sake, like, I'm still racing here. Keep the noise up for 50 more meters, will you? But it was still one of the craziest experiences of my career to date, for sure.
Yeah, I kind of had I didn't want to. I didn't know if I wanted to bring up 2012 because I didn't know what happened there. Because I did see that you finished third, but I see you only take Andy Badley and Ross Murray to the 2012 games. I remember you wildly racing badly. I don't know if it was at Oxy, and you take it on
Stanford.
500 to go, and I'm just like,
Stanford, yeah.
holy shit! Like you go like a man possessed. And I was wondering, I'm going through your power of 10, and I'm going, actually, why were you not at 2012? And
So, yeah, it's basically when that I was at Peyton Jordan, that 1500. I knew that I was capable of running about that 3:35 mark. Can't actually remember what the standard was, but and Andy Badley was in the race. A couple other Brits were in the race, and I was like, right, let's just go for it. Like, yeah, like you say, I went for it hard. Blew up with probably 200 to go, and basically paced Andy Badley to the standard. In hindsight, obviously not the best thing to do, but come back for the trials. Had a bit of a rough time that week of the trials. Turns out I had shingles going into the trials, and I was like, it's bloody hot in this room. And then I was sharing with a guy who actually was my roommate in Tulsa, and he had come over for that summer, and we were in a Holiday Inn somewhere in Birmingham, and I said to him in the middle of the night, I was like, I'm roasting. What is happening? And then like 5 minutes later, I was like, did you open a window or something? I'm freezing. And well, I had a fever, like, and anyway, I was third at the champs, and basically we had asked. I'll refrain from saying names. We asked the powers that be within British athletics, like, what do I need to do here? I know, like, I'm third. I only have the B standard, and then we know that the way it was structured back then, you could only have a B standard if you only had one guy with a standard. So it could either be like 3 A's, 2 A's, or 1 A and 1 B, or just 1 B if nobody had the A. But Andy Badley and Ross Murray had the A standard, so they were like, well, you have to get an A standard. And I was like, right, well, how long have I got left? And again, the powers that be said to me, it doesn't matter. You'll need to run it. We want you to run it twice. And I was like, what do you mean I have to run it twice? Like, I was third at the champs and whatever, blah, blah, blah. And so we were like, all right, we'll forget it then. That, like, I expected the conversation to go along the lines of, look, we've got this young guy, like, mate, we'll try and help you set up this, we'll try and help you get a race somewhere in Belgium or whatever, like, even if it's a BMC, we'll try and get some pacers in there for you to try and get you. And they were like, well, it doesn't matter if you run it once because we need you to run it twice. And we were like, all right then, cheers.
It's another girly moment there.
Yeah, it's yeah, right.
And then you go out in 2014. You put on that senior GB vest at the European Championships, and you get yowdy. You get after it, and this is you in the senior international stage for Great Britain. How did you find the event in Zurich?
It was quite weird, honestly, because I'd never been to Europeans or anything like that. I'd been to I had made it to Worlds, and I'd made the final in Worlds in Moscow the year before, so I kind of knew it, but I didn't really know what to expect from a Europeans. I knew there was a lot of these guys that were really good, and didn't really know what to expect. So I was kind of a naive young guy, really, in that environment, and it was the messiest race probably I've been in to this day. I kind of went close to the front with 600 to go. I was planning on just getting into like second or third on the outside, staying on the outside, and kind of covering any moves. Well, when I went round to take the front, everybody just threw their arms up, pushing and shoving. Kieran or Leonard went down, and I got like pushed in the back to the front, and I was like, this is just not where I want to be. I don't want to be here. Why am I in the front with 500 meters to go, 550 meters to go? So I kind of slowed it down a wee bit, which only caused more carnage because everybody was trying to get into position behind me. And I think it might be McKessie that went by me with like 450 to go, and Charlie went down, and a couple other guys went down with like 400 to go, and I was like, for goodness sake, just stay on your feet. And then I ended up trying to make a move a little bit down the inside on the back straight and just got stuck. So then I was like, bugger, right. So I had to basically wait for the traffic to go right to pass me, and then just gave it hell with kind of 180 to go, and snuck onto the podium by a boher. So
I mean, your first senior medal, like how proud were you for that moment?
Yeah, it was crazy, and honestly, I don't really remember it all that well, other than just kind of my mum and dad were in the stands, my wee brother, and just thinking like, this is wild, but the meet just kind of goes on.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, right, okay, everybody off the track, next race is coming, and so you're kind of like, all right, and then you get dragged to doping control and all of that, and then you're dragged from one spot to another, and I'd never been in that position, obviously, so I felt like I was just a wee dog getting dragged around on a leash underneath the stadium, and then they throw you out onto the track to get your medals. And I was wearing, I think they might have been Ailey Child's trousers, because I had forgot. You're like, when you do a GB International, it's like, right, do not forget your presentation gear. You need your presentation jacket and your presentation trousers. Even if you're like confident you're going to be last in the race, you have to bring your trousers and your jacket. Well, I was like, right, whatever. Like, I'll put my jacket in my bag. And I'll wear my trousers on the bus. Well, the Zurich was weird because you warmed up in a different track. The warm-up track was like a 5-10 minute minibus ride away from the stadium.
Right.
So you warm up at this warm-up track, and then you get in a minibus with everybody that's in your race, and they drive you to the stadium to go underneath to do the second call. Well, I'd left my trackies at the warm-up track, so I got into my bag, and I'm like, oh no, I've not got my trousers, so I'm going to be standing on the podium with my presentation jacket and my twigged bare legs hanging out. And so I tell one of the team doctors or something like that, and thankfully the women's 4x4 or something like that was just about to go off, and so, or they'd just been or something like that, and so I'm standing up there in Ailey Child's like trousers, but they're obviously cut for a woman, so they're like a wee bit tight in the areas that they shouldn't be tight in. But I pulled my jacket down and got on with it. But it's just another one of those things that add into it being a crazier day than it already was.
And then we get to 2016, the Olympics. How I mean, two amazing things happen. Your first son's born, and the Olympic Games, so you become a father and an Olympian all in the 1 year. Pretty good deal, that is.
Yeah, if only the Olympics had been better for me, that would have been a good deal. I came down with a bit of a rubbish knee. I had like a nerve trapped in my knee, and it was we just couldn't figure it out for a couple of weeks when we were up in Fontana. And by the time we got it figured out, I'd missed, probably in the 6 weeks leading into Rio, I'd probably trained properly for 2.5 weeks. The rest of it was all interrupted, jumping on the bike, getting in the pool, blah blah blah. So that was hard, but and didn't make the final. I made the semi-final, and then I had a bit of a shocker in the semi-final, and that was that. And it's what's funny is people ask me what my biggest kind of memory of the Olympics is, and one of my biggest memories is a weird one, because it's me sitting in the big dining hall cafeteria type thing at like 3 o'clock in the morning with Robbie Andrews. The two of us are just sitting there chatting because he didn't make the final, I didn't make the final, and we're just sitting there kind of feeling sorry for ourselves, just having a laugh about how stupid it is and what we're actually here for and what we're doing and all of this. And then you're like, right, it should be like some magical event on the track, and the thing that's like sitting in the front of my mind is me sitting in the cafeteria with Robbie Andrews at 3 o'clock in the morning. But obviously, you know, every cloud, so to speak, has its silver lining. So because I didn't make the final, I got to spend some time with my family in Rio, which was amazing. And, you know, got to do some of the sights and go to the beach with my brother and my mum and dad. And that was huge to have them there, because otherwise I would have just been sitting in the village feeling sorry for myself. But you know, to go back to what I was saying earlier with Neil, was you get back on the plane, and as soon as you take your Olympic gear off, everybody's like, who's this boy? And then I kind of came back, and it was only a couple more months until Ronan was born, and that kind of helped me put the Olympics behind me and refresh my motivation to never kind of let that happen again, and make sure that finals was where I belong, and that's what I need to be doing. And Ronan helped me get to that point.
Yeah, because now I definitely say, like, when you're a husband, like, it's, you know, you're running for your family, but I'm guessing when you've got a little one now, like, that must propel you for, that must be like that's your seventh gear now, you know, like, being a father, you know, that you're their superhero to say,
Yeah.
you know, that I think it was I was watching something about The Rock and Anthony Joshua doing a sort of documentary with each other, and The Rock said, like, you will feel supercharged when your kid comes into this planet.
Yeah.
And is that how you felt? Was it like you just felt like there was just you were running for so much more than just Adidas, you know, your wife? It was, now there's this living, breathing thing that just charged you up.
Yeah, I think, you know, it's funny because I can't remember. I was talking to must have been one of my friends I was talking to about, who is recently married, and he was like, it's weird because I had said to him, it's weird because when you get married, you kind of, all you really do is add in a person into your circle, right? You've got your parents, your siblings, your whoever, your best pals that you love. It's your kind of circle of love, for lack of a better term. And all you do with a wife or a husband is add them into that. And, you know, you kind of, you give them all the love that you've got. But then when you have a child, it's like, all right, see you later, everyone else. Like, I've got all I need here.
Yep.
And it's this tiny little thing that just pukes and cries and shites everywhere. But it's like the most amazing, you know, it's the most amazing thing. And you hear a lot of people saying, you know, I didn't think I could love anything this much. And that is it's a good way of saying it, because you don't actually, like, I'd never could obviously I'd die for my family and my wife, but like, these kids are just, it's like another level.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is another level of motivation. And, you know, you find yourself asking yourself questions where you're like, you know, is this really what I want my son to know that I did, or how I acted, or what I said?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a lot, you know, that's kind of, you know, obviously when not to revisit again, but when I was young, managed to get myself in some trouble and having a laugh, and you don't think about the consequences. But as you grow up into an adult, you think about the consequences for yourself. But then once you have kids, it's like, okay, well, actually the consequences are not just what I have to deal with, it's what they will think of me, and what they will think is okay, and what they will think is acceptable. And you just kind of, it adds another level of, you know, when I'm, you know, my alarm clock went off at 5:15 this morning for me to go out to get my run done, and I get up at that early because my wife's getting up that early to do her workout in the house. She's got her thing on her laptop and she does those workouts, and so I get up that early so that I can eat breakfast, but also be the one who goes up to get the kids if they wake up during that time that she's working out.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, if I was staying in my bed till 9 o'clock, then she would have to stop her workout and go up and do that. And so that's kind of just how we operate on a daily kind of level here. But like my alarm clock went off this morning and I was like, oh, like I just don't want to get up. Like I really, really don't want to get up. And, you know, but then you think to yourself, well, I'm going to be most likely be in a position when I'm older and my kids are older that I'm telling my kids to get up to go to training of some sort. And I don't want to be the guy who was like, you have to get up, you have to be motivated, you have to do this, you have to do that, if I couldn't do it myself.
Yeah.
So it holds you. It's weird to say that like a 10-month-old baby and a 3.5-year-old would hold you accountable, but they do. I mean, they hold me accountable really kind of every day, from basic decisions to the more important adult ones. But it definitely helps when you kind of get on that start line and you're like, well, it's not just for me and it's not just for them, it's for the kind of full family unit.
Yeah. So what you're trying to tell me is I need to delete my Facebook and Peebles account. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
If you can still remember your Peebles login details, then yeah, delete it.
Because man, if I or when I have kids and they're holding me accountable to some of the stuff I've done, then I can't really say, you know, do that.
Facebook could really do with a function that, you know, as soon as you update your thing that you've had a baby, it just deletes everything that was before that.
There we go, Mark Zuckerberg.
There you go.
New business idea.
Trademark that.
And see when you're moving into Ronan's born, you're moving into the 2017 season. You have no indoor season. Is that because of Ronan, or is that a plan that you and your coach have? You no indoors. We're usually indoors. I'm thinking Chris O'Hare indoors. It's like it goes together like PB&J sort of thing. So talk us through what was the plan there.
That so Rio, the injury that screwed up my Olympics we didn't get it. It was still giving me trouble until November, December time. So I hadn't, I took way longer off than normal. I mean, didn't actually start running until the middle of December. So we sat down in December and said, look, I was fit because I had been swimming, and I mean, I was putting in like disgusting amount of hours in the cross training. And so, it was, which was kind of easy because sure, I wasn't getting any sleep, but it doesn't matter if you swim a bit slower, or it doesn't matter if you bike a bit slower because the times are arbitrary, right? So it's a bit different to running and being looking at your watch and you're like, how am I only running 9-minute pace? What's going on here? If you're swimming slow, it's like whatever, like who cares? You're swimming, you're getting the exercise in. So, I would that kind of November, and Meredith was at home with Ronan, so it was, she didn't have to go back to work yet, so it was easier for me to go away for a couple of hours and train. So I would bike for like 2 hours, finish at the pool and swim for an hour, and then like basically roll back home on my bike because I was rogered. But I was doing that every day, and so I was fit. I was really fit, and I was like, honestly, I reckon I might be able to get back into like actual proper indoor, like low 350-mile shape if I just smash some sessions. But the smarter thing to do was, no, look, outdoors is where we need to focus our energy here. Let's make sure that we get it right. Having this new baby is not going to make things easy, so let's not add in another stressor into the works. So I didn't. So the whole team left for altitude camp in January, and I stayed in Boston with Meredith and Ronan, and Meredith went back to work in January. Mm-hmm. And I just did all my running all my running except for my track sessions and Sunday long runs really was on the treadmill. So I was pounding at about 80 miles a week on the treadmill in my living room. And it was tough because Ronan would sometimes sleep and sometimes he wouldn't. So I'd put him in his wee chair beside me on the treadmill and the rhythm of the running would keep him asleep. But sometimes I'd be five minutes in and he'd start bawling and I'm like, right, well now I'm going to have to condense my 2 runs to equate to 12 miles for today into one 12-mile run this evening, which isn't ideal, but it is what it is. You just get on with it. And then I had help from lots of people. I would take my Tuesday and Friday sessions, we'd do them at the Harvard indoor track, and I would get up, we'd feed Ronan, get him in his car seat, and he'd fall asleep in the car seat. I would go to training and he would normally stay asleep in his car seat while I did my session. He'd wake up, I'd feed him before I went to do weights, and so I'd be sitting there in the Harvard weight room feeding this like 4-month-old baby, 3-month-old baby, put him back in his car seat, do my lift, get home. But on the days that he wasn't having it, like there was one day that the janitor at the Harvard indoor track was just wheeling Ronan around in his pram around the outskirts of the indoor track because I was like half a mile into a mile rep session and he starts bawling, and we see this guy all the time at the track on his little tractor thing that cleans the floors, and he said, as this Jamaican guy comes up to me and says, do you want me to just wheel him around or hold him or something while I do this, while you finish your workout? And I'm like, not really, mate. Like, I said, like, not really. And then I was like, do you know what? I'll get it. Like, please, that would be actually great. If you wouldn't mind doing that, that'd be great. So he just, hey, pal. You coming in? So I just got on with it. You can cut this part out for audio if you want. Here's Ronan to say hi.
All right, Ronan, how you doing? Is your Uncle Sean?
If you're going to stay in here, you have to sit quietly, or do you need to go back out and see Gigi? Gigi. Go on then. Close the door behind you.
Nice.
So he would just wheeled him around that day, and then one day Lindsay Sharp's mum was in town, and so she wheeled him around the track when he was screaming. And the other days, once Terence got back, Terence would have like 4 stopwatches for all the different groups, and he'd be holding Ronan in one arm, and one day it was just like, get your own splits. I'm holding Ronan. So it was challenging and tough, but now when you look back at it and you forget the stress that it brought on and the challenges, it's just funny to look back on now, and it's fun. It makes for good stories.
Yeah, and I mean, whatever plan you had, it must have worked. I mean, 2017, you get your, what we could say, redemption. You're now back in the Olympic Stadium.
Yeah.
From the 2012 to now 2017. And also you get another title. How was it? I mean, you and Charlie Grice were back and forth, in those last few years. I could see how much it really meant to you as you crossed that line first in 2017. How was your prep in 2017 to get you into that great shape? And then also, how was the London World Championships as well?
Yeah, my prep was pretty messed up, but for the first time in my career, I was okay with it being different. I was okay with it being a bit unorthodox. And I could kind of see I was getting a bit older, and I could see that, look, if you're fit, you're fit. And if you're fit, you're fast. And you just get on with it. And that was the kind of mantra for that year, and I just got on with it. Didn't have a very good final, but it was a weird final because it didn't seem fast, but it was. And I just tactically I made some errors, but it was more of an emotional error for me. I was so fired up, and I'm an emotional person, so I was so fired up. I mean, I think I could have just battered all 11 other guys on the start line if I'd had the opportunity. It was that I was kind of that amped up by it, and the noise of the crowd and everything like that. It was kind of, I think if you go back and watch it, depending on what if you were able to find like the BBC coverage of it, and they kind of zoom in on my face, I actually look like I'm about to just headbutt the cameraman like right in the pus. I just looked like I'm raging, and I was just really in it, and I was so in it that I didn't make the best tactical decisions because I was just too in it, and I was too emotionally involved almost, and just wanted to do so well. And we kind of knew that there was this medal up for grabs. The bronze medal was kind of up for grabs, and so I just wanted anything, more than anything in the world at that time, just to get that medal. And ultimately, that was my downfall. But you learn from those things. And since then, I've made a conscious effort not to get so wound up by it and so aggressive, because it's not a 100-meter race. It's not a 200-meter race. You have to be tactically astute, and more often than not, I pride myself on being tactically astute, and that was probably one of my worst tactical races, which is obviously not the best place to have it.
And did you find, from where would you say 2017 London Stadium or 2014 Glasgow Stadium, where would you say that you heard the most noise?
I think Hampden, probably just the shape of Hampden. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure there was more people in the London Stadium, but they weren't so emotionally attached to a Scotland team. There's something quite different and quite empowering about a Scotland team over a British team, especially for Scots. It's I think the English, obviously can't really speak for the English, but when they compete for England, it probably feels much the same as competing for Great Britain. And when we get to compete for Scotland, it's something a bit more emotionally charged. And so the fans in Hampden were definitely louder.
Yeah, so the Braveheart effect.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. And they were really piling on for the referendum at that point as well. So the national pride level was very high.
That is brilliant. And how did you take some downtime after the World Championships, or were you fueled by being a little bit disappointed, or did you sort of make a rational choice, shut it down, and then start getting into that sort of 2018 season?
I raced. No, too many bloody seasons now for me to remember which is which. I did race after London. I raced in a couple of races stateside. I think I probably did the Long Island mile, which is a great meet put on by Kyle Merber. He runs a pretty good show up there in Long Island, and everybody gets really close to the track, and it's really involved. Everybody gets really involved in it. And then a few days later, Fifth Ave, which is always a carnage. So it's always good fun, that one as well. But I will have raced a couple of times after London, but it's always quite difficult, because when you're that disappointed, it's like you just want to be like, forget it, forget the whole sport, burn the whole thing to the ground. I don't care anymore. I'm done with it. Give yourself a couple of weeks and you're right back in it, and you remember why you do it. But it's difficult when they kind of, and all the media were kind of building me up to potentially win a medal, and and then they're just like, so that when they build you up like that, all the language after the fact is all very negative. It's all very, he failed to do what he was doing. And they're like, right, I was still like 11th or 12th in the world, like, whatever, like, thanks for your hate. Like, so you just get on with it.
Yeah, because that's kind of Andy Murray. He was a little bit pissed off with that sort of stuff before and after Wimbledon as well, when he was maybe a runner-up. instead of, all hopes were on him to win, and he get really pissed off for that sort of stuff. And I think this is, I do want to delve into the mindset there of, that there is days and there is going to be weeks where, or there is going to be times you don't live up to expectation. And I think that a lot of sub-elite, non-elite athletes think that, you can just, the elite guys are just switched on 24/7, 365, and they can, they've got this sort of protective bubble around them. Like when hate mail comes in or disappointing news, they can just shrug it off, like no bother to them. Yeah, but we are all human at the end of the day, and especially when you're getting into something with high hopes, like anybody does, and you don't quite meet expectations, like it is the best. What separates, I feel, the good from the great is the fact that, like you said there, after a couple of weeks, you then understand why you're in the sport again. You're in it back for love. Whereas a lot of people, if they do fail at something, they just want to sort of knock it in the head.
Yeah.
So when I spoke to Neil and he was speaking about the European Championships, and I want to always reiterate to listeners that you guys don't have the best of everything. You just make the best of the situation you're in at the moment in time.
Yeah. So
it's another, your career has had some amazing highs, but there's been some, when you Google Chris O'Hare and you see there's sometimes you on your hands and knees bent over on the track and sort of flabbergasted at what happened there.
Yeah.
But the fact that year on year you can pick yourself back up, dust yourself off, and use those lowest moments that sort of would make some people question to be in the sport to you propel onto higher heights. It's always been like a sort of story with yourself. Like sometimes at certain major champs, they don't go your way, but then the next one does. It's almost like, beware, Chris is coming.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the thankful to my parents for that attitude and that kind of mindset, because that's just how they've been. I mean, as long as I can remember, my parents have worked incredibly hard to provide. Worked incredibly hard, not just to provide the fiscal side of it, to put food on the table, but also to provide an exorbitant amount of love and of care to us. I mean, there's time and time again we see parents that just throw money at their kids and just let them be, and they would rather have the love than the money, and they had that's a difficult thing to get right with 4 children, and one job with my dad, and my mum would just always worked jobs, whatever they would be, that allowed her to be at home so she could continue to provide that love and the care. But they've always had to fight for it. They were never given anything, and so they had to fight to get what they wanted. And I think we hear that all the time. Especially now with social media, and everything's a motivational game, right? We hear all the time, you have to fight for what you want, phrases like that. But it's not. I think people forget that the word fight is innately the fact that you have to fight something, battle against something that is trying to stop you succeeding. Mm-hmm. Everything that goes wrong in your career, whether it's your own fault or whether it's somebody else's fault or whether it's just fate or whatever it is, those are all things that are trying to hold you back. Or, for me, they're trying to hold me back. They're trying to stop me achieving what I want to achieve. And that's what I'm fighting. It's not just a word. It's not just you have to fight. Oh, well, what does that even mean? It means that you have to meet the things that are challenging you head on and tell them to beat it, and get on with it. I mean, it's not, it's you can dodge things here and there, but the things that are going to hold you back, you have to just obliterate, get to them, punch them in the nose and run over them. And that's kind of just how we have always been, because nothing's ever been necessarily that easy. I mean, I saw my brother, my brother who's now a successful banker in New York. He struggled with his, learning difficulties and whatnot when he was young. And so from day one, I've seen someone in Ryan and in my parents supporting Ryan give like way more effort and energy than I had ever seen anyone give anything, just to keep up, and then continue that on. Once he was able to keep up, to continue that on, to succeed. And then he carried that into running as well, and helped me run to this, and helped me get to this level that I'm at. And so that's really, that's what people don't understand, I think, that, your pundits, your people who've seen it on Twitter and whatever, and think it's a great idea to smash their sausage fingers into their phone and give their 2 cents, because nobody actually cares what they think. We're not doing it for them.
Yeah.
And social media and all media, and it's in a way has given them, the right, so they think, to give us rubbish. But
yeah,
again, as part of the game. But you just have to fight, and that's what I've only ever known that. So it wasn't something I had to learn, which I'm fortunate enough for.
Like, honest, I think anybody that has been following your career, or anybody that knows you, will absolutely 100%. I think if we summed up Chris O'Hare in one word, would be a fighter.
Yeah.
It's like that grit that you do with your teeth, and then the robot arms that you say, like 250 meters to go. It's just like you are fighting for everything. Like it's admirable to watch, and it's crazy to also think that somebody the same age as me is a role model to me. Usually you think role models should be a bit older or a bit, that's but you, like, through, like I said, at the start in my career, we were, on team buses together. You would win the medals, and I would always be, sort of fighting for the back places. And I would always be like, I'd always ask my coach, like, how can I keep up with Chris O'Hare? Like, how can I keep up? We need to train harder, and I need to train more. And then when I remember, I think I can still remember you telling me you're going to go to America, to Tulsa. I think it was like 6-stage road race championships or something like that. And then all of a sudden, I was like, oh, if I want to be like Chris, I'm going to try and get to America. So, like, I think, I don't know. Probably sometimes you might not think, because you're in your own environment and your own life, but the amount of people that must look up to you, well, until they openly tell you, you've positively affected so many people. I mean, if we just think about Edinburgh AC, we were talking about that in Tartan Running Shorts, was, that is incredible. But you're the person. I mean, there was people before yourself, talking about Gosson and all these guys, but you've been pulling. They pulled you up. You've pulled Josh Kerr, Jake Whiteman, all these great athletes. They've looked up to you, and you've created this path of international running, winning these medals at major championships. Like, you've done a massive amount for distance running. So, like, even going off topic, just like, you are like a massive role model in my eyes. So, and for me to be interviewing you just now is actually quite surreal. I was telling my wife, I'm like, oh, by the way, I was like, shh, I've got Chris O'Hare on the podcast. Don't make any noise. So,
this chat she'll be worried that you're going to leave her for me.
You did say there was enough Chris to go around. One of the most amazing things though is you keep coming back to is your family, and also your family is, whenever I see some of the biggest moments in your athletics career, you're hugging your mum and your dad. It's
Yeah.
incredible. And then basically I wanna finish off this podcast with asking how your dad enjoyed his 2019 birthday. Talk me through it, buddy.
Yeah, actually, I think I I think I flew back to America on his birthday,
Right?
as terrible as that sounds. But yeah, I don't know. I'm sure he had one too many. But yeah, the whole, the whole, my gran had not been keeping very well. My dad's mum had not been keeping very well, and at that time, she managed to, she was able to come for the heats. It wasn't 2 days would have been too much for her to see the final as well, but she was able to see the heats, and that was kind of that was huge for her, and seeing and him getting to see that as well was huge for him. So it's yeah, it was quite. Yeah, I mean, to me, there's nothing more important than family, and if I didn't have my family there to celebrate with me, they would be empty. Those times would be like, well, whatever, like, it's a medal, it's a piece of steel painted a color, like, doesn't matter. That medal doesn't bring me anything. The getting to share those moments with my family, that's what makes your heart full, and that's honestly that's more important than anything. I mean, and I was just reading about Michael Strahan, who's a American football player for the New York Giants for like 13 years or something like that, and he says, like, as long as your heart is full with the memories and the experiences, then money is like, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so we should be spending the money and spending the time on getting those moments and getting those experiences. And obviously, I'm hugely fortunate enough to be able to experience those very specific experiences, like winning a European medal in your own country, with my family, which is just, I mean, spectacular.
Like I like was like 2019. I mean, on like 3,000 meters is your race. Like the way you run at 63, 62 second pace, I'm like going. I'm sitting there watching it. I'm in the stadium. I'm going. Looks like you're jogging. Man, I'd have like spaghetti arms and legs. Like your running economy at that pace is incredible. Like I was just like, wow. And then your 1,500 meter tactical brain as well to put yourself in certain positions at a certain time. I was just like, oh my god, like you're nailing this. It's unbelievable. And like my wife better be, better lock the doors, or I'll be getting my first flight to Oklahoma here. But like, how did how did you find the European champs in Glasgow? I mean, I'm guessing we talk about 2014 commies, talk about the 2017 London, but the noise must have been electric in that stadium.
Yeah, I think so. To kind of backtrack a touch, my downfall we have kind of identified my downfall in a lot of major championship finals as being, I'm trying to win a race that I'm like 99.9% of the time never going to win. Like when I'm in a world championship final with Marengoy and Chariot, the likelihood of me winning that race is so low. So why am I putting myself in a position where I'm trying to win the race? Well, I shouldn't be. Tactically, nearly, I shouldn't be. But it's a hard thing to change, because since I was 12 years old, I've only ever tried to win a race. I've only ever tried to win the races I'm running in. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. When it doesn't work in a world championship final, likelihood is you're going to be way far down the field, because as soon as your wheels fall off, you've got 11 other guys ready to just kick shite out of you. So it's hard, right? But that, and so we went in with the 3,000 meters in Glasgow was new. It was I had done the 3K in Boston to get the time. I'd done the 3K at the trials, and then the heats of the 3K. So when I went into the final of the Europeans in Glasgow, I'd only done 3Ks in the last 10 years or something like that. So I was, somewhat, I kept thinking to myself, well, I'm pretty underqualified here for this. But at the same time, I'm like, well, I'm kind of overqualified for it as well, because I've got way more speed than most of the guys in this field, really everybody excluding Jakob. So it was more of a case of, look, don't put yourself in a position where if you go and try and win the race, you might not get a medal. Make sure you get a medal first, and then you can try and win the race. So that's why, with kind of 300 to go, there was a gap between me and the Ingebrigtsens and me. And then when Jakob went past Henrik, I was like, right, don't go. Terence had told me, do not go until 200 to go. Don't launch until 200 to go. And when you do launch, just give it everything. And so with 200 to go, I took off after Henrik. And with 100 to go, I knew I was going to get him, or I was very confident I was going to get him. And I actually came back. He gave me more of a fight than I thought he was going to give me. And the dive at the line really was like, oh, but he might have just dived his way into beating me for the silver medal here. But I mean, with 100 to go, I was thinking, I can get this. And at the same time I thought that, the noise just amped up another level. And I was like, all right, here we go. Let's get it done. And it was wild.
It was, honestly, the noise was unbelievable. I couldn't even hear myself shouting for you as you were running. I was in the back straight and you're running back, and I couldn't even hear. I was like, I can't even hear myself here.
Right.
Absolutely, it was mental. It was so good, and the fact that at the end, a lot of there's. I think the Ingebrigtsens are kind of like Marmite. Either people like them or they hate them, but they seem very in the when they were doing the interview with you at the end. They seemed decent. What was your the Ingebrigtsen sandwich and having a wee joke?
Yeah, they're good guys. They're good. They're nice people. And I always for years I've kind of joked around with the dad, and just in passing, kind of never really had a conversation with him, but just kind of joking with him. And I said to him, after that, we saw him in the warm-up area, and I said, so does that mean I can be part of the Ingebrigtsen family now? And he was like, yep, you just took Henrik's spot, he's out. And I was like, imagine being in a family where you get a bronze medal at European Championships and you're out. So, but that's a testament to how they run the show. So
yeah. And would you put that down, 2019 Glasgow silver medal, would you put that down right now as the best race experience you've had in your career?
Either that or 2017. Either that or 2017 British champs, or no, because it's I got kicked off of funding at the end of 2016, right. And you come back and win British champs, and you're just like,
cheers,
have a bit of that. And not that it helped my funding case much, but anyway, that's for another day. It's that those moments where the moments where if you were to look back and you see those photos of me at a finish line where I'm like punching the air and I'm just like really like happy, I guess, like elated, is because I've had to fight back from something. Had to fight back from a rubbish 2016 and get taken off funding and all of that, and then 2017 it's like, right, have some, and then getting European medal indoors was redemption for not performing at European outdoors in 2018, and then Melrose Games was of both years, when both times I won Melrose. There's been something the year before that's like not very good. I've struggled with it, whether it be a funding conversation, whether it be a bad race or whatever. It's always been just kind of like, right, I'm still capable of what I know I'm capable of, and so anytime that happens, that you can stow that away as being as one of your kind of best moments.
Brilliant. And just to round up everything, what would you've had a long successful career in athletics, and the journey continues, and we can't wait to see you racing, hopefully the end of 2020, but maybe early 2021. What would you give people who are listening, athletes who are listening in the podcast? What would be your one piece of advice to allow them to flourish in the sport?
Well, I need to be careful here because I gave lots of advice to Josh Kerr and Jake Whiteman, and now they're making life difficult for me. So I need to be careful about how much advice I give out.
Remember, I'm in the marathon now, so you can give me as much advice as possible.
Right. No. I mean, I'm always happy to kind of talk to anybody about anything. But I think the most important thing that I've learned over time is, and learned from my mistakes, which the idea of advice is that you give people the advice that you learn from your mistakes so that they don't have to make them. It's kind of just making sure that you're always, everything that you do is always intrinsically motivated. And when I say that about me, it's not just intrinsically to my bubble, my family, not just me as a person, but my family and my environment. And what I mean by that is, don't try and do things to impress other people. Don't try and do things to get this person to notice you or this company to notice you, and don't try and do this or that. Just do what you need to do. Don't listen to anybody else's opinion unless you genuinely trust that person. You don't have to listen to your governing body about what they think is best and where they think you should race, because nobody knows you better than you and your own coach and your own family. So don't trust anyone unless you 100% trust them as a person, and not as a professional, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, like I get that. Like making sure that you've basically metaphorically got a pair of noise cancellation headphones in your ears, and you just after it with your soul on fire.
Yeah, definitely.
So question time. It's a wee quick questions. You just fire away as fast as you can. We've got a couple of questions here, and then just whatever pops into your head first. All right, you ready?
Yep.
Favourite food?
Pizza.
Favourite running shoes?
Takumi Sen Adidas flats.
Nice. Favourite place you've ran?
Probably Rome.
Oh, cool. Favourite artist to listen to whilst running?
I'll probably get some laughs for this from people back in the UK, but Luke Combs is a country singer, and he's good. He's it's all very kind of family oriented songs, and it's getting me through lots of lonely runs at the moment.
Favourite movie?
The Fighter.
Oh, nice. Split shorts or half tights?
Split shorts.
Favourite origin of coffee?
Doesn't really matter.
Anything goes.
Yeah, anything goes, as long as it's good.
Favourite athlete? Could be boxer, you know, whatever.
Henrik Larsson.
Decent. Favourite book?
Got it back.
Aye. Favourite book?
I don't know if I've got a favourite, honestly. I'm reading Malcolm Gladwell's Talking to Strangers at the moment, which is pretty good. Kind of bit different.
Yeah. Favourite TV series?
Sons of Anarchy.
Nice. Good man. Well, that's us done with the questions. Thank you very much for your time today. It's been super insightful, and yeah, like I hope the lockdown and all these things start to slowly come back to normality, so that you can get back on the track and get back to what you love to do.
Yeah, I hope so. I just wanted to say that Meredith, I said to Meredith a couple of days ago, I said I've got on our podcast this week, so just like don't expect me to take care of the kids for a couple of hours on Wednesday after my massage.
Yeah.
And she was like, "Oh, who's this one with?" And I was telling her who you were, and I was like, honestly, like because I've had people, you know, since winning Melrose, bunch of requests for podcasts and stuff like that, all these American podcasts. I'm like, whatever. Like, just said no because I couldn't be bothered. And I was like, but I did turn running shorts as a favour to Miles Edwards, who I've known for quite some time. And I said to Meredith, and I was like, yes, Sean, I've known Sean since we were probably 12 or 13 or something like that, and I was like, he was much like me in the sense of we had fun, caused some trouble, and I was like, I'm so proud of him for because he came out to America, did his thing, did that and worked hard, and now he's just fucking hustling, working so hard with the personal training and everything like that, and so I'm just I'm just dead happy to have friends and folk that I know from growing up in an environment that's not necessarily conducive to success.
Yeah.
That you just working hard and getting on with it and just being a good person is. And I was like, I just want to support that as much as I can. So let me know if there's anything big stuff that you're doing, let me know and I can share it and repost it and all of that stuff. Hopefully push some more traffic in and whatnot. Because I think what you're doing is just awesome.
Thank you very much, mate. I really appreciate that.
You're welcome.